So, first off, I want to do a little promo here for my friend's book, Running Red by N.B. Conrad. Noel Conrad, he is a friend and former teammate. The book is actually about a fictionalized version of our cross country season in college, 2008 season to be specific. It took him 14 years, 15 years to write this book, basically. And he just released it this year, so I'm going to put a link on the description so you can check it out. There is a character in here based off me, which is cool. It'll probably be really easy to figure out. But this is actually something that I worked on with him for over a decade, and I always consider it my first writing coach gig. I was obviously still learning a lot. I was still in college, but since then, it's pretty awesome to see how much this has changed in terms of the revisions and the rewrites for the better, and how much better I got over time at helping with being like a writing coach. So check it out. Show you the little cover again. Also available in audio, or going to be, I think so. But it's available on Kindle. So yeah, check it out. I am not going to talk about True Detective Season 4 in terms of an analysis or a deep dive or a review of any sort. There's plenty of that online. What I'm going to talk about is sort of the backstory of how it came to be made. And it could be considered a cautionary tale depending on how you view this season. Or it could be seen as sort of just something to consider when getting involved in the possibility of developing a project for a big network or a studio or just any type of production company that has the power to really get your stuff out there in sort of the fucking machine that we call the entertainment business. So I'm just going to get right into it. True Detective Season 4 is by Issa Lopez. It's kind of like a weird thing because obviously Nick Pizzolatto created the series, but he had nothing to do with this fourth season. Issa Lopez is the writer and creator of the fourth season specifically that is tied to the True Detective universe. And if you're not familiar with True Detective, which whatever you should be if you're watching my videos, it's an anthology series. Every season is an entirely new cast, new storyline, even takes place in different time periods if you want to see it that way, depending. Because obviously a lot of this is now kind of like three, at least for sure two, season 1 and 3 have dual timelines. But essentially the series deal with sort of cultish, mysterious crimes, and there's some supernatural elements thrown in there as well. So, with season 4 of True Detective slugged as Night Country, that's essentially what we get. But here's the thing. This project originally was not a True Detective series. Issa Lopez, who is a Mexican director, she had written something from what I was able to gather was a feature film, like a 2-hour feature film that was set in Alaska. And that was this horror, supernatural detective film, crime thriller, however you want to call it. And through her representation, her management, got it to HBO, and then HBO essentially offered, or maybe told her, or whatever, said, let's make this into a True Detective series. And essentially that's what she did. She completely kind of reshaped it from what it originally was and put it into the True Detective universe. This happens a lot. And the reason why it's important to know this, because if we're just objectively going off of the general response of True Detective Season 4, a lot of people don't like it. And not in a way that just because they didn't get what they wanted. A lot of people have very legitimate and credible complaints in terms of the writing, the dialogue, sort of the plot devices that are introduced into the series, and just the general narrative structure and narrative movement. So these are all very technical things that people have specifically pointed out and backed up with credible arguments that are wrong with it. But knowing that this was originally a 2-hour movie that had nothing to do with the True Detective universe, it makes it understandable. because when you take something and just expand it in general, this is what happens with franchises. You look at a movie that comes out, it's not really supposed to be a franchise. It does so well that they start making a 2, a 3, and a 4. By the third and fourth installment, it becomes stale and dry that you're just like, okay, what are we watching anymore? And so with this particular project, Issa Lopez had to figure out a way to take something that was completely separate and turn it into this expanded thing of 6 episodes within the True Detective world, written by somebody who had a very distinct voice and perception of how this world is. That's very hard to do. It's hard to do just on your own when you're coming up with it, but to now do something to match some other creators' tone and voice and style, that's incredibly hard. I don't care who you are as a writer, how good you are as a writer. Does it excuse any of the inadequacies of the series, of the season that people are talking about? No, it doesn't. I'm just providing an explanation. And the reason why this is important, I believe, for every writer, especially new writers and those who are kind of, surpassing, your peers and getting farther and farther along, is a lot of your success, so to speak, is going to come down to decision making of yes and no. Because, this is all hypothetical. Issa Lopez could have said, no, I don't want to do a True Detective series. I don't want to make this a True Detective series. Or she could have said, you know what? I still want this to be separate. Let me just come up with something entirely new for True Detective. And the results could have been so much different because she's not a bad filmmaker. She has a movie out there. I think, let me look it up really quick. It's called Tigers Are Not Afraid. And it's a good movie. It's a very, very well done, good movie. And so she's obviously skillful and talented. She knows what she's doing. But the decision for her to say, yes, let me take this original film and expand it into a 6-episode True Detective series, you could argue very, very well that it did more harm than good. Now, there's another aspect of it that this was a True Detective series that was highly watched and viewed. So that may matter more to a lot of, and it's going to matter more actually when you think about it to like networks and studios. But ultimately, because of the poor response that it got from the general consensus, her next project may suffer from it, even if it's really good, because of what people experienced with True Detective Season 4. Now, as a writer, if you get put in a position, you have to really have a moment of honesty with yourself, because oftentimes when you've worked so hard, especially if you've been working at this for 5, 10, 15 years, if you have a network like HBO saying, hey, this project you gave us, it's cool, but let's turn it into like a prequel series to The Sopranos instead, it's going to be hard to say no, because you may have not gotten such a big opportunity to work with a network or a studio so confirmed. I know a lot of us, we get close and then it just kind of fizzles out. But if you have a major network or studio saying, yes, we are going to work with you as long as you do it this way, it's hard to say no, especially when you've been working at it for so long, and especially if you feel very confident in yourself. Because I don't think Issa Lopez would have said yes if she didn't think she can pull this off. Did she pull it off? The consensus is no. But that's sort of the thing too, is that when you are making a career out of this, it really does come down to those decisions of that are like this. And it's very complex because it's very rare that any of your projects are going to be and turn out the way they are on the page when you send it out. I think we all know this, but I think we also need to be reminded of it, especially with True Detective Season 4. A lot of people that could have been her fans or were her fans are probably not going to show up for the next thing she puts out. So even though this was objectively a good career move and it got her a lot of notoriety and all that, it could be in the long term damaging. We have no idea to tell until we actually see what happens when she puts out her next project. But it's complicated because she will get another project. This was one of the most watched shows on HBO, regardless of the consensus from the fan base and just general audiences that didn't like it. So they're going to give her another show, or somebody's going to give her another project. So we know that for a fact, but also how many people are legitimately going to want to flock to see it based on their experiences here. And writing as a career is so critical on the like fine tuning of these decisions. And it makes it even really hard for a lot of people to break in, because if you're stubborn like me, if you don't have your sort of, I don't want to say delusional because I'm very aware, but if you're not unreasonable, unrealistic would be, and it's not fully unrealistic because there's plenty of situations where writers got exactly what they wanted, but there's way more where they didn't, way more. So if you're stubborn like me and you have a hard head like me, you tend to not be as flexible as maybe somebody like an Issa Lopez. And that's not a good thing or a bad thing. That's just what it is. I made that decision a long time ago. And it's helped me in many cases, but it's also hurt me in many cases. There's a good chance that I may never sell a script because of that, and I might be able to sell a script because of it. There's been, it's all really just knowing at the time that you're given certain options with your writing and your project, and you have this opportunity to really understand what you're putting yourself in. I would say she definitely knows that, but as you can see, if you're a writer, look at sort of the general consensus of what she's having to deal with in terms of how people view her, not just as a filmmaker, but as a writer. And this isn't like a male or female thing, because a lot of women who are fans of True Detective have said the same thing, that they think the writing is awful in this series. So that's another aspect of being a writer in this business, is having to deal with the results of your decisions, because ultimately season 4 is a sum of its parts. It wasn't just her doing everything. There are executives, there's producers, the actors, all of these individuals are involved. All of them have some sort of input and hand in molding this thing. But she's the one who's going to essentially face the brunt of the results for it. So when you have to understand, I can't emphasize this enough as a writer, like the business aspect of this. It is a very, very tough business. You can be an average writer, but if you're business savvy enough, you can get very far ahead. You can be a great writer. If you're not business savvy, you won't get far ahead. But at the end of the day, all of you can be great writers, and all of you can be business savvy. But making decisions like this when you get a project greenlit, it almost doesn't matter how much of a great writer you are. You can, because of the complexities of it, the decision that you made to say yes to a certain dynamic of a project may have kind of just set you up to fail from the beginning, because there was no way that Issa Lopez was going to win really over any fans when she made that decision to turn this 2-hour film into a 6-hour TV series, or anthology series based on a property that already existed that had nothing to do with it. And that was by a very, very distinct and talented writer that was really a lot different than her. So take it with a grain of salt, but proceed with caution. Really think heavily about the decisions you make, and don't get too caught up in the opportunity that you're getting. And don't be afraid to say no and negotiate your no. And obviously I have no idea what those conversations were like with Issa Lopez and HBO or any of that. I'm just saying that this is something that happens a lot, and sometimes it can turn out phenomenal. The third Die Hard movie, Die Hard with a Vengeance, was not a Die Hard movie. It was something completely else. But the saving grace is that it was a movie changing to be like another movie. It wasn't like a movie changing to be like a TV series or any of that. And I think that's why there's a lot of aspects of the storytelling in this series that suffer, where it feels like there was so much filler because you have to figure out how to tie it into the universe of the original series, but also you're turning a 2 hour thing into a 6 hour thing. So it's just, you need to understand the decisions that you're making and exactly how they're going to set off a domino effect and where that domino effect is going to end. So proceed with caution, take with a grain of salt. If you've seen season 4 and, let me know what you think about it. Me personally, I'm not going to discuss it on here, but I hope there's a season 5